Welcome back. Ahead of the anniversary of the Dobbs decision, Democrats are pushing a series of messaging bills around abortion, including around the protections for abortion providers, travel for abortion care, and contraception. Democrats nationally are hoping that abortion will be as motivating of an issue for its voters in 2024 as it appeared to be in 2022. Take a listen to Senator Patty Murray from earlier today.
Last November, in every single place abortion rights were on the ballot, abortion rights won. Americans do not want politicians making health care decisions for them, and they want their fundamental rights and freedoms to be protected, not taken away. We're going to see this week if any of our Republican colleagues have been listening.
All of this comes as Virginia's legislative primaries provided even more evidence of the potency of the issue, and certainly now there is a stark divide between the two parties. The Democratic incumbent for a Richmond area state Senate seat, who has opposed abortion rights for years, was ousted by his primary challenger, who made the support of abortion rights the centerpiece of her campaign. I'm joined now for today's panel, White House correspondent for Politico, co-author of Playbook, Eugene Daniels, senior opinion writer for the Boston Globe, and an NBC News political analyst, Kimberly Atkins Stohr, and Republican strategist Jim Dornan, who is the living and breathing Mark Twain quote. Right, my friend? The rumors are just that. He is right here and in great shape. Mr. Daniels, let me start with you. To me, the big thing I took away from Virginia is you cannot, if you're not, that the abortion politics now, you're either fully pro-life or fully for access. Any sort of deviation within your own party and you're in trouble.
Yes, there's no room for error on this for these.
There's no more nuance on either side.
It doesn't work after Roe goes away, right? Mm-hmm. One, the Republican Party is still struggling to figure out what the right message is, right? You see how that's working out in the primary, where you have people like Mike Pence talking about a national abortion ban, and then you have Donald Trump kind of waffling as he does, the kind of saying, I'll do whatever ends up better. But on the Democratic side, there is no room, and because they have realized for the first time that abortion is actually something that sends people to the polls, and the idea of the courts and Supreme Court sends people to the polls, and they are using all of those tools, finally, after years of not doing that.
Are we going to put into, are the following two groups of people extinct, pro-life Democrats and pro-choice Republicans?
I think so, because I think what has happened is people have seen the impact of some of these restrictive laws and how it affects people, how it could affect people. Not just, they don't think of abortion in the same way that they did before. They see it as health care. They see it as incomplete miscarriages and how these laws can affect people. So that is why it's not just that there aren't any room, there's no room within the party. Within the electorate broadly, it is largely pro-choice, and so there's really no place to go.
Jim, you have lived your life in getting Republicans elected in blue states, which means you've worked for a lot of Republicans who have been, say, well, I'm pro-life on this, but I believe in these exceptions and all that stuff. Can you get a Republican like that elected right now?
Probably not now, and the advantage the Democrats have right now is that they lost. They lost last summer, and now it's easier to create that argument and that fight. And Republicans
the same way it was the other way around.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
The pro-life community, hey, we lost Roe v. Wade, and we're going to win.
It changes the total dynamic of who you're talking to and what you're saying to them.
When does the Republican Party, because this is to me the real conundrum, right? If 2024 doesn't go well, will the party conclude that it's abortion or Trump? And I say this because if they conclude it's Trump, then it may be another cycle or two.
Well, you know
my
answer on that.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, that to me seems to be we may be a full decade away from the Republican Party sorting out this issue.
Well, I think the Republican Party has a lot to sort out for a lot of reasons. But I think what we have learned is that there are no more single-issue elections. You have, especially elections that do what happened in 2020 and 2022, which is drive out a lot of younger people, a lot of people who are really motivated by what is happening in the world generally coming out of a pandemic, and Roe v. Wade, and Donald Trump, and all these things happening at the same time. That if Republicans only sort of focus on one issue, that's never going to be the winning message.
And now Democrats have all of these stories about how the impact of not having these abortion protections.
The little girl in Ohio.
The little girl in Ohio. I was with at an event that Dr. Joe Biden, the First Lady, had with these women who had these harrowing stories. You know what I mean? There was people crying throughout as they were talking about, them having a miscarriage and having to leave the hospital because the doctors were scared to do something in Texas when they were having that miscarriage. And so those kinds of stories are going to be what you keep seeing seeing, and I think that moves a lot of people.
And don't sleep on the issue of democracy. I think people still care about the government and its institutions.
They may blink the
freedom,
right?
Yeah.
Jim, what would you tell? You know, it's going to be interesting in these Virginia elections, which are so, you know, if Glenn Youngkin is a national figure, he's got to win control of the state legislature.
Well,
we know
also
Democrats are running on abortion.
He has an abortion problem, too.
Right. I was just going to say, Republicans aren't going to run on abortion, are they? They're going to try to run on something else. How do you, if you don't counter it, I mean, is he just going to try to hope he can education his way out of this?
Yeah, I do. I think he'll concentrate on other issues. And if I were a Republican strategist, which I am, I would be telling my candidates, talk about the economy, stay away from social issues. I mean, they're a loser. All you have to do is look at what Target and Bud Light did, and you realize that there are 50% of people on each side.
View it as a third rail and just stay away?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I tend to be more libertarian as a conservative anyway, so that's where I'm coming from. But, I mean, I just don't think it plays well except for a very minor part of our base.
Well, speaking of mining the base, Eugene, there's all these, we talked about messaging bills that Democrats are doing on abortion. There's all these messaging bills that some Republicans want to do in the House.
Right.
But not Don Bacon, you know, not Nancy, not the ones that actually have to deal with swing voters.
Right. That's what this party has such an issue with, especially in the House. We have folks like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene who want to impeach Joe Biden. They want to do all of these things that their voters aren't thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. And that you're talking about, you know, social issues being a third rail. These other issues are too, because people will say to you, no matter where you go, we sent them to do something. But there is a small minority that they're listening to in the party that want to see the fighting.
Well, if the party was really thinking and had real leadership, Kimberly, the number one story they should be pushing today is not Durham. It's the learning loss.
Right.
Like, this would be right in the wheelhouse of, all these Republican critiques about shutting down schools.
This is an actual education issue. It actually affects not only our children's future, but our position as a nation in the world.
I think it's like not even close to being, like, I don't think there's another story today that's as important as this one.
But with the base shrinking and people wanting to get a larger share, they're seeing the movement from things like anti-wokeism, and they just can't break from that. They just can't break from it to focus on these other things.
I agree with that completely. It drives me insane.
Well, what's interesting, Jim, is that you see with swing voters, they don't care. They don't even know the Disney fight. But you have DeSantis pushing the anti-Disney stuff, which I believe in a caucus of extremely conservative people, okay, they care about the Disney issue.
Well, exactly. And if you think about it, it's anti-Republican. Republicans are the party of big business.
Or your Republican party.
Well, the old one. Well, that's true. I'm an establishment guy. But we're going after a private company because of the way they feel about a given issue. That's what we used to accuse the Democrats of doing. And it was wrong then. Why isn't it wrong now?
And the national Republicans are making this really difficult for the folks in the states that do want to focus on education or the economy, because they do want to talk about this. Everything DeSantis talks about has to do with these, what used to be third world issues, these social issues. Donald Trump, the same thing. Abortion is in that, and that's all you're hearing from a lot of these Republicans. So it's how do the rest of the party deal with the other issues when the top of the party is dealing with the...
And that gets me to another issue, which is Donald Trump's blotted out the sun. How do you break through if you don't talk about Trump's problems and you're a Republican, Jim?
I think that you need to talk about Trump's problems and the fact that he's lost the last 3 elections for our party. I mean, I don't understand why that's not being discussed. This discussion of pardoning...
Is it being discussed and just not being...
carried out?
Yeah, devoured. Yeah. Maybe they don't want to eat that food.
Well, DeSantis is talking about it.
Well, right. Yeah. Of course, he kind of has to. But you're talking... I mean, this pardoning a guy... I mean, come on, give me a break. That's actually an issue. It has no business being discussed among primary candidates.
You know, Kimberly, I was fascinated that Mike Pence is continues to try to walk this line, right? On one hand, he talks about people stop him and saying, thank you for, doing your job. And on the other hand, well, how do we know the President Trump's guilty yet? Now, he doesn't want to promise a pardon. That's maybe out of principle, but he won't say it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, I agree with you 100% on the pardon issue, but I'm not sure it's so much, people call it a fear of Trump. It's a fear of the base.
The voters,
it's directly related
Trump,
to what the voters, if they don't think that the voters' sort of Trump fever has broken, they can't stop trying to pander to that as opposed to carve out their own message.
Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, these are all rational people. They see the polls with swing voters. They know they should be doing something different, but they're not. they're afraid of these voters, aren't they?
Well, because they think the Trump base is a guaranteed turnout, for one.
Yeah.
And swing voters aren't. I had a conversation with a guy, a very close friend from Baltimore, and he actually said to me that we were talking about the presidential, I can't support Ted Cruz next time, no matter what he does. And I said, why not? He said, because he wasn't strong enough supporter of the J6 protesters. And I looked at him, I said, are you out of your mind?
Wow.
The guys who ran into my office
This is
and
the Republican.
ransacked it.
What you're saying is that's the Republican base.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.